Time passed. Edgar shook Sophia. More time passed. Edgar rolled up his sleeves, mumbled something about porcelain, and hit Sophia Alderson with his walking stick shaped like a question mark. Pope Tunky and Pope Phillips crossed themselves. Sophia Alderson's beautiful jaw went pop. Yet more time passed. I didn't move. Even more time passed. Edgar's walking stick broke, and Dr. Saint or Saint Dr. Cunningham and the pilot carried Edgar to his helicopter, which moments later took off in the direction of Skeptic Tower. Pope Phillips was next to the security van collecting piano keys. Pope Tunky stepped solemnly to the other end of the rose garden and said a few words over Sophia Alderson's body. Sophia's parents and her followers went on counting, their fingers still in their ears. Dr. Saint or Saint Dr. Cunningham ran his hand along my frame and very slowly went inside Rainthorpe House. I just stayed there in the rose garden for a bit, listening to Pope Tunky mumble on about nothing. Pope Philip's priests and choir boys joined in. The giant candles were relit. As the wheelbarrow with Sophia's body in it was being pushed slowly around the rose garden by Pope Tunky, I pushed myself through the crowd of Sophia's followers and the policemen that were gathering nervously outside the gates of Rainthorpe House, and headed back to the first metaphysical betting shop. The former Archbishop of Canterbury followed me with several gold bars in his hands. The former Archbishop plugged in my direct feed interface to a computer terminal and was just about to tell me what he wanted to bet on when the giant television hanging from the vaulted ceiling tuned to Who Knows TV went dead. One moment metaphysical bets were running across the screen, and then the screen went blank. Then there was the flash. Part 2, Chapter 49. It was brilliant white. Unbelievably white. "What was that?" said the former Archbishop, dropping his gold bullion. The bulletproof stained glass windows imploded, and the entire betting shop lurched to the left. Then gusts of wind rushed in from outside, and it was like the worst days on Everest. Far off on the horizon, through the broken windows, we could see Skeptic Tower. It was soaring into the sky, climbing up and up into the air like a rocket, great chunks of it falling away as it rose. Huge, oily clouds of red-purple smoke seemed to be pushing it higher and higher. The tower's ascent slowed as we watched. Then it started to sway to and fro. It swayed like that for what seemed like an age, then it toppled over and fell into the maelstrom below. A vast mushroom cloud took shape where Skeptic Tower had been. 38,000 people were killed instantly. The great dome of St. Paul's was cracked like an egg, and billions of metaphysical receipts flew out and filled the sky. Eventually there were so many metaphysical receipts in the air that they blocked out the sun. Part 2, Chapter 50. The bomb had been made out of red mercury, mercury antimony oxide, dissolved into mercury, and then left to irradiate in a nuclear reactor for 20 days. An hour after the explosion, a Muslim group calling themselves Tanzim al-Jihad claimed responsibility. At exactly the same time, a shadowy Catholic movement known as the Bloody Cross also claimed responsibility. Extremist Hindus told journalists that they had planted the bomb, as did literally hundreds of followers of Sophia Alderson. 6 hours after the bombing, 82 religious groups had claimed responsibility, and the police were getting more calls all the time from groups swearing that they had planted the bomb. The billions of metaphysical receipts that littered London following the cracking of St. Paul's Dome were highly radioactive. People were advised not to have anything to do with them. Men in spacesuits collected them with pointed sticks. The handful of metaphysical betting shops that remained surrendered, and the stock market crashed. Dr. Saint, or Saint Dr. Cunningham, slipped out of the country and surfaced in Papua New Guinea. He became in effect the leader of Sophia's followers. Dr. Saint, or Saint Dr. Cunningham, and some 10 million nuts all over the world praised to Sophia in heaven by the ticking of clipboards. As for the second great schism, well, it went on and on. Growing more and more out of control, Pope No. 6 turned out to be a waxwork dummy, Pope No. 7 committed suicide, Pope No. 9 retired 2 days after being elected and became a contemporary dancer, Pope No. 10 had previously been a sheep shearer, and Pope No. 11 had been on death row in America twice. I was 5 years old when Edgar died. He had been 27. He has a grave, although hardly anything of him was ever found. Scientists assured me that an atom or two of what had formerly been my best friend would be present in any pile of gravel from within the blast zone. I had an MOD official in a spacesuit scoop up such a pile of gravel. We were then both sent through an army decontamination unit a number of times. The army decontamination unit was a borrowed autonomic car wash. Edgar's epitaph reads, "Not sleeping, but dead." Epilogue. A month after Edgar's death, the United Nations granted my request to become a space probe. I was hastily placed aboard Space Shuttle Virile and put into low Earth orbit. I think they were glad to get rid of me. By the time I left the planet, something like 380 organizations had claimed responsibility for the bombing of Skeptic Tower. From low Earth orbit, you could see Edgar's handiwork, written in kilometre-wide trenches on the desert of the Sahara. You could make out the following words: "Who knows?" The question mark hadn't been finished. It looked more like an exclamation mark. The tip of the question mark was to have reached the Red Sea, but digging had stopped while there was still 250 miles to go. A few minutes later, Space Shuttle Virile passed over North America and the Mojave Desert. It was possible to make out the letters Hu Kana. Again, there was no water in the canals. We passed above each of the 6 great deserts of the world, seeing clearly Edgar's canals and noting the absence of water. In the desert of South America was the single word Hu. The Gobi Desert had the letters WH. The Namib Desert had a massive W carved out of it, and the Australian outback had a mark that looked like the letter V. There was not a drop of water in any of them. Edgar's plan to turn the deserts of the world into farmland had failed. Religions flourished again, and 50 million people went on dying of starvation every 2 years. After we had orbited the planet a few times, I was released from the cargo bay and sent in the rough direction of the star system Epsilon, Eridani. At Cape Canaveral, I had rocket pods attached to my frame and a radio receiver transmitter welded onto my push bar. I used the rocket pods to adjust my trajectory. I would later use the radio receiver transmitter to send this long and winding electromagnetic transmission. 80 years after leaving Earth, I left the solar system. Aloha. 79,650 years later, I reached the star system Epsilon Eridani with my frame degree in agnosticism. 304 Earth years ago, I parked myself in high orbit around the fourth planet of the Epsilon Eridani system. I have named it, rather unimaginatively, Edgar's World. The planet is 10,000 kilometers in diameter, 120 million kilometers from its sun and its atmosphere. As a guess, is composed mostly of aminomethylpropanol, stuff used in many hairstyling products. It looks quite beautiful. I have every hope that in 20 billion years or so, life will appear on this little world. When it does so, barring no mishaps, this life will evolve into people, as life does. I will be able to talk with these people when they develop radio. I cannot land on the planet, for I would burn up the moment I entered the atmosphere. I will have much to say to these people when they get here. I will tell them about Earth, about human beings and their civilization. I will tell them about art and supermarkets. And when they ask me about the purpose of life, as I'm sure they will, I will tell them about Edgar Malroy and what he would do whenever anyone asked him about the purpose of life. No doubt these people will not find this answer very satisfactory, and their priests will ask me about God, etc., etc. In reply, I will send a very short message, translated into whatever language these people will have invented for themselves. The message will be this: who knows? Aloha.